Welcome to the Morning Slice.
Hello again, my friends, and welcome to the Morning Slice. This is your host, Brianna McNerney, and today we are talking all about projection, the coping mechanism of projection, and how you can use awareness of your projections to propel yourself towards your goals, towards personal growth, etc., etc. There's a lot to say, I think, about the history of projection and the people who conceptualize this and have studied this. I believe this concept was brought forth by Sigmund Freud back in the late 1900s and developed by his daughter Anna, and I believe also studied and theorized on by Carl Jung. But we're not going to go into all of that today. You are a wizard with the Googles, I'm sure. So I'll let you do that piece, and I'm just going to speak to my experience of projection, because this has been a game changer for me. I remember when I first landed on awareness around what I was projecting. I learned about it in college, but it didn't really sink in until several years later when I was working as a mental health case manager, and I started getting really into my own personal development. And that was out of necessity. It was because when I first started my journey as a mental health case manager, there was a period of time where I started having anxiety attacks and just was like not doing so hot. And I was like, okay, if I need and want to help people, which I do, I need to get this under control so that I'm not bringing all of my personal stuff to the table every time I try to help somebody, because my clients were triggering me, right? So around that time is when I really started leaning into this concept of becoming aware of what I was projecting onto other people and using that awareness more intentionally. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And at the end of the day, we can tell ourselves a lot of crazy stories about other people and why they're doing what they're doing and what they're thinking about and all manner of things. But the stories we're telling will always say more about us than about them. So let's get into it. Okay, so what exactly am I talking about when I talk about projection? When we're talking about is a coping mechanism that people use, like a subconscious psychological tool that we use to protect ourselves from the deep, dark secrets that live in our psyche. To make them more palatable, we project things that are inside of us onto other people. We attribute things that we actually think, behaviors that we actually do onto other people. And usually when I've noticed this, a lot of times it's in a negative way, but it doesn't need to be. A lot of times when people are bringing awareness to projection, it's about other people projecting onto us. And we bring less awareness to what we are projecting onto others, which we literally can't help but do. Everybody is projecting onto pretty much everyone and everything else all the time. We literally can't help it. So when we are not aware of our projections, it usually comes out in like, why are they doing XYZ thing to me? Why are they inflicting this harm on me? Why are they being so inconsiderate or unappreciative or whatever? Why is this person doing this thing to me? It looks like blaming other people for the way things are. So just blaming other people for our circumstances, casting out instead of taking accountability. Looks like making assumptions about what other people are thinking or why they're acting the way that they are, which we can never really know unless we ask questions. There are a million different ways to understand the actions of other people and the thoughts of other people. We could literally theorize about what and why people are doing whatever they're doing forever and never get to the right answer. The only way to really know is to ask them. And even then, that is not a direct line to the truth, right? So instead of doing these things, instead of focusing on other people projecting onto you or kind of mindlessly projecting out and like casting blame and making assumptions, the new way to look at this is, again, that we are all pretty much projecting all of the time. We can't help but project the way that we think and see the world onto what's happening around us. That is how we organize the world. We create belief systems and patterns and ways of understanding, and then we use those things to understand the world. Like, that is kind of what we're talking about here. But these things aren't permanent. We can work with them. And that's the name of the game when it comes to personal growth, is to recognize the things that we have come to believe about the world and choose to believe new things that are more supportive for us. So really, the whole goal here is to recognize that the way that we interpret other people's actions and anything else has everything to do with us and relatively little to do with them. Because again, we cannot know if our interpretation is correct without confirming and validating it with that person. So this is one of the ways, I want you to really understand this, that this is one of the ways that we create our world with our thoughts. Because how we project onto other people can create a self-fulfilling prophecy, for better or for worse. Self-fulfilling prophecy is another thing to Google. It is legit. You know, when we believe a certain thing about a person, it changes the way that we approach them, which then in turn impacts how they respond to us. It creates a feedback loop that is not necessarily what we want. So how do we recognize projection so we can get ahead of this and be a little bit more intentional about how we're projecting onto the world around us? What world are we creating? What self-fulfilling prophecy are we contributing to? So some of the ways that I recognize projection in myself is through recognizing judgment. So when I am casting judgment on another person, and I mean, we all do it. Anybody who has talked to me probably would be surprised to hear that I do have judgment. I'm a pretty non-judgmental person, but I'm a human. Things happen that create a moment of judgment in my mind. The difference between me and other people is that I recognize it. I try to catch it. I try to stop that judgment, and I try to ask questions instead, because of this concept that we're talking about, right? Jealousy is another really great indication that you might be projecting something out onto other people. Anger at others, you know, a lot of times anger can arise because of how we think about the person or thing that we're angry at. You know, how are we conceptualizing what has created that? What is fueling that thing that we're angry about? All of this is projection. They're not facts. It's just the way that we are viewing the situation. So really, a through line here is any sort of strong, noticeable feeling that you're having towards someone else, or a situation that is external to you. Any explanation at all of something happening outside of yourself is really susceptible to being projection, a projected thought that has more to do with you and how you see the world than how that person or people or situation actually reflects what's really happening. It's not truth. It's what you are projecting onto the situation. So, and there is something to be said for like other people are doing this too, right? So when you think that other people are projecting onto you, yes, they are. And just make sure that you're aware that that's going both ways, right? It always is going both ways. So what can we actually do about this? Hopefully this is helping you to become aware of the fact that projection is running through pretty much every thought and internal explanation that we have for what's going on in the world around us. But what can you actually do? Well, when you notice yourself focusing on someone else, period, or an external situation, take it as an opportunity to self-reflect and ask yourself some questions. What are you making this mean? What do you think it means about the person that you're thinking about? What do you think it means about the situation that you're focused on? What do you think it means about you? What are you making these actions mean? Another really interesting question to ask is, what rules are you playing by that don't actually work for you? So a lot of times when we are like judging people or we're jealous about something that someone else has, etc., it's because they are breaking some sort of rule that we have come to live by and just internalized as fact, when actually it's not, and they are evidence for us. So what are you perceiving them as doing that's incorrect? And is it possible that you've internalized some sort of rule or understanding of the world that isn't actually working for you and you don't want to operate that way anymore? Can you use your awareness of how that person is living to liberate you? That can be a really interesting question to ask. And in all cases, when you notice yourself focusing externally, which is a great indication that you are projecting something internal onto your external environment, redirect your thoughts to yourself. What is your relationship with you right now? What do you need? How do you want to feel? And how can you support yourself in making that happen? How can you support yourself in feeling better? Redirect yourself to what you are contributing to the situation. How are you thinking? What do you want to contribute? And choose to believe in the world that you want to create. Choose to believe in the version of you that you want to be. Choose to be a stand for the best in other people, regardless of anything else. Because when you can become aware of your projections and be more intentional about what you are projecting onto the people around you, be intentional about what you're thinking of yourself, be intentional about how you are viewing others, and be intentional about how you're viewing external situations, you have the power to create feedback loops that actually create more of what you want and less of the painful stuff that you don't want. When you become aware of your projections and use that awareness to become a more intentional thinker and creator, you will become unstoppable on your growth trajectory. All right, guys, that is the long and short of what I have for you on projection today. How did that resonate with you? Did it give you any tangible takeaways? I would love to hear what you think of all of this and how you're going to implement this today. So make sure to leave me a comment, shoot me a message, send me an email. Communicate with me however it feels best. I would love, love, love to hear from you. And if you want to dive into this deeper, if you listen to this and you were like, Brianna, I know that what you're saying is correct, but I'm having trouble seeing and figuring out how this is actually playing out in my life, then reach out. Let's do an epiphany session together. Let's work together and really identify what you want, first of all, and what is standing in the way of you having that. And spoiler alert, what's standing in the way of us having pretty much anything is 99% our own patterns of thought, the way that we are projecting onto the world around us, the way that we are interpreting situations, the rules that we're choosing to live by. So in an epiphany session, we will fully understand what it is that you would love to create for yourself. We'll break down some of these barriers that are in the way for you, and we'll identify some strategies that you can use to create more of what you want immediately in your life. So I will drop a link to schedule that in the show notes, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening. It is always a pleasure, and I'll talk to you again soon.